Welcome to the Chosen Companion series. My name is Mike, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and fellow host, James of the nerdybible.com. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. I am hyped, so pumped about the
It's your
episode
favorite.
tonight. It's my favorite episode of the entire series uh, for multiple reasons, which we'll get into. But I'm really excited to talk about it. This is the episode that I've alluded to throughout the podcast series so far that contains my favorite uh, cinematography, cinematic moment. Um, and then just the content of this episode is so good. So I'm excited to get into it. I'm doing well. You said you're doing well.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty good.
we talked a little earlier today. We're about to go on like a massive podcasting bender over the next 3 weeks. We're just gonna be pumping out recordings um, to get through the rest of season two. Our release schedule will not change; that will stay the same, I believe.
hmm
We'll still release every week, but we're gonna get these recorded um, because
For the holidays, you got to
we got
shut down,
we
which
got
which
holidays
is
coming up. We got season three coming out in theaters next week.
mhm, which is exciting on our part because that means I get to like deck the whole video behind me with like Thanksgiving stuff and Christmas stuff like many weeks before. So, you know, definitely gonna get in the spirit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I might be wearing a Santa hat in like 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. So next Thursday and Friday. So we're recording on the 7th of November. Um,
That's
so
today.
when you are hearing this in just a couple days, episodes 1 and 2 of season three will be premiering in theaters.
hmm
Which is really exciting. There's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to next week. You got that. And then we also have I mean, I know everyone listening to this podcast is also waiting with great anticipation for the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that comes out on November 18th. Just like, I'm over here just on the edge of my seat for all this stuff. I can't wait. It's going to be
Oh
crazy.
my goodness.
Finally going to get my birthday presents like 5 months later after my birthday, but whatever. It'll be worth the wait.
Oh,
Hopefully.
did you get it for your birthday or something?
I saved my birthday gift for this new game.
Oh, that's good.
It's totally what a 35-year-old man, father of three, would ask for his birthday, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The
I
new
mean, my
Pokemon game.
birthday
Yeah.
was yesterday,
Happy
and
belated.
well, it was a week and a day ago to all you. But
Time travel.
I forgot to do the soundboard. We need the soundboard.
Oh
We've
yeah,
already
dang it.
already starting to
Um,
throw rhythms here of soundboard needs. Um, yeah, definitely. So my gift was a ticket to Disney World. So
nice.
I am a 34-year-old
Hey,
man going to
that's
Disney
still way
World
cooler
for the
than a
first time.
Pokemon game.
Yeah.
Your
And we
first
got a
time?
ticket. Yeah, I've never been. That was like the
Nice.
running joke. So just a quick thing. I walked down on my birthday and my wife and 4-month-old are sitting there and there's all this Disney stuff. You got Goof Troop playing because I loved Goof Troop growing and all this stuff. And I'm like, I said, this is kind of like cruel because I was like, I've never actually been to Disney. And I'm like, this is like I don't this isn't nice.
Yeah. So they
And
did like what parents do to their kids, where they like
mm,
trick them and like fake them out, like, oh, we got to go to the dentist, and then they're on their way in the car and they're like, psych, we're going to Disney.
exactly. No, that's
Nice.
exactly what happened. And so, yeah, no. So I'm going to Disney and Hollywood Studios for a day. So we're gonna be in Florida. So I'm pretty
Nice.
excited. So
That's
you'll
rad.
have to wait until season 3 to hear my rant on how until we record season 3 recap. But we'll go there when we go
That
there.
sounds like a lot of fun. I'm happy for you. That'll be a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into the episode. Enough of this small talk, this chitter chatter. We got a very important episode to record here. So tonight's episode is season 2, episode 3. It's called Matthew 4:24, and The synopsis goes as follows. In Syria, the disciples take shifts to help Jesus deal with a large crowd hoping to be healed. Philip continues to mentor Matthew while Mary Magdalene and Rama start to study Torah. A long, exhausting day turns into night as the disciples share how they perceive the Messiah. Jesus' mother, Mary, arrives from Nazareth to help with her son's students. Around the campfire, the group tries to get to know each other better. They discuss their experiences and their inner turmoil, but tensions erupt when Simon disputes with Matthew about being chosen. Tempers flare as sides are taken, and the disciples begin to argue, forgetting the purpose of why Jesus chose them in the first place. All of a sudden, an exhausted Jesus says goodnight to them, and his mother Mary attends to him. The disciples listen and watch in shame. Shame! Yes. So a lot going on with this episode, while also being a very self-contained episode, which I think is super cool. But yes, let's talk about the opening here, because this is my favorite moment of the entire series. This is the scene I've been talking about, and it's so amazing on so many levels. First off, the cinematography thing. What I love so much about this opening scene, which lasts about 14 minutes, it is, or appears to be, one continuous shot, no cuts, no edit breaks. So if you pay attention, you'll see the camera follows every character and like slowly rotates in and out, weaves in and out of these conversations with absolutely no cuts or changes to another camera or scene breaks or anything like that. And it's one of my favorite things that people do in movies or shows. It's just like oh man, it just takes like a whole other level of like production quality, like acting quality, like choreography. Because I mean, if you think about it, you get 13 minutes into the scene and someone is on the wrong mark or goofs up their line or bumps into the cameraman as he's like weaving in and out. You just got to start all over. You can't just be like, all right, we'll just cut there and we'll just pick up, like go 3 lines back. We'll pick up from there. So just the teamwork that's involved in shots like this, it's always mind blowing to me. And when I first saw this episode last year or whatever, the first time I watched, after this was over, I like looked at my wife, knowing that she wouldn't have noticed or really care, but I was just like, Becca, do you understand what just happened here? That's the coolest thing, like one of my favorite things that anyone does in film, and we got that in like a Christian show, which is just, when you're used to the level of quality that we normally get with Christian productions, like this might as well have been like the invention of the talkies, when they moved on from like silent film, or when they brought color into like TV. Like this is that level of groundbreaking when it comes to Christian productions.
Well, that's a pretty strong feeling on it.
I know. Hot take.
No,
that's what you come here for. The hot takes.
No, I think it's really good. I don't think there's any faking that. I don't think there's any like splicing. I just want to know how many times they screwed it up.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Sometimes some of those they're called oneers. Some of those oneer shots like can be like faked. They have like very good editing tricks where they make it appear like it's one shot, but for benefit of the doubt, like I always like to just assume every oneer is a true oneer. But yeah, like, did you notice that at all when you watched this, or like, what do you think about that?
No, I did not notice it the first time I watched the show. Actually, this whole episode wasn't my favorite the first time I watched it. I don't know why. I think it's because it was an abrupt stop from what they've been doing. It's like the children episode,
Yeah.
right? It's something out of the ordinary. It's what my wife brought up a good point. It's that there's no individual stories. It's one big collective understanding of these characters. Like there's I mean, I guess you're learning a little bit more. You're getting a perspective of like Matthew, for example, as he's trying to figure out how he's going to just start reading reading Torah or the scriptures. But like for the most part, you know how like the last episode we said, I actually like this. I'm processing this out loud now, right now. But last episode we had talked about them just kind of all not knowing each other
Hmm.
and like kind of just like almost like those awkward moments.
Hmm.
Here we'll eventually get to, but there's a little bit of like conflict,
Yeah.
which is what you need to kind of build trust to everyone, which you need to build like a team, or
Right.
and so it's pretty I really liked it. But to jump back on what we were talking about, because I think I went a little off topic there, is that I don't know if they'd I mean, I know there's tricks to splice it, but, like, they're not on a track. There's no, like, consistent, you know what I mean? I don't think
Mhm.
they could I mean, I don't know, maybe I just don't know anything about splicing videos, but I think it'd be very difficult to splice that video
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
you know, I'm
Especially
not
since there's a lack of, like, big special effects, so, like, what comes to mind, because I'm
mhm.
a giant dork and, I talk about this stuff all the time every Thursday on Showboys. There's an episode in Loki on Disney Plus, the Marvel series Loki.
I haven't watched that one.
It's pretty good. It's pretty
Is
good.
it?
Yeah, it's
I'm a
another one
little
of
bit
those, like,
behind on some
outside
of
of
the
the
shows.
box Marvel shows where it's not just
Mhm,
your typical, like, superhero thing. But they have one scene in an episode that is, um, appears to be a oneer, but because of the special effects and CGI and stuff that they have in Marvel productions, obviously,
mhm.
like, in some, like, explosions and, like, the chaos of the scene, because it's a very chaotic scene. Like, I watched a video. I think it's by New Rock Stars, which is a great YouTube channel if you're into like the nerdy pop culture breakdowns and stuff. Uh, where they go through and they're like, and right in this one frame, this millisecond of the scene, you can see right here where they make the cut and edit it into the next scene. But here in this episode, obviously, it's a camera out in the middle of a field circling around people having
Mhm,
conversations. It's not like, people running around on green screens while like cities are blowing up and falling apart around them where you can like hide the
mhm.
transitions.
Each one would have probably been different to each take.
Hmm.
Like, because you can't get that lined up perfectly with the camera. Like, it's probably you line up all the takes, they're gonna be very similar, but the angle and the way that
Yeah.
like, it's not gonna be I don't know. So, no, this was a really unique one. I really wanna know how many times they screwed this up.
Right. I just
Um
wonder how, even on like a successful take, because I'm sure, never having been on a set or filmed or acted or
Oh, that's a
directed
good
anything
point.
in my life, like, even if you have a good take, they probably
You do it
get
4
multiple
different
good
times.
takes,
Yeah.
because like you said, everything, even on a scripted scene that's going to be edited into,
Uh-huh.
where there are going to be those splices and transitions, they still take multiple, I'm sure, just to get, you know different emotion or visual stuff out of the actors, or in this
Yeah.
case, like the angles with the cameras and stuff. So I wonder, outside of how many times it was messed up, how many successful ones they took, so they
That's
had
true.
options.
'Cause, I mean, they get to post-production, they're like, "Dude, how did we not notice? There's a
No
guy back there picking
one
his nose."
fixed it. Yeah.
You know, like
Oh man.
oh,
And
man.
what you brought up about this being like the little children episode,
Mhm.
wasn't that also episode 3 of season 1? And this is
That's a
episode
great
3 of season 2?
observation. I wonder if there's oh my goodness. I wonder if there's a theme amongst that in like, I think most stories have like, I'm trying to write a story right now, and I'm trying to one of the things I'm doing right now is compartmentalize these, like, this overall arching theme of how to, like, going from I wonder if that was done on purpose. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's very interesting because there's no it just really reminds me of the children episode because there's no, like,
Yeah.
it's just different from everything else.
Mhm.
Like, you can take the rest of the episode, well, for not, we'll just say for season 1, take all the rest of the episodes, and you can find them to be similar to one another in their, like, overall goal, how they're approaching things, how they're doing it, but, like, there's that one episode that was just completely like a complete outlier to the rest.
Mhm.
And this one so far, I don't want to speak ahead, but so far seems to be that. And yeah, you're right. It's episode 3 as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We'll have to see if season 3,
Astute
episode
observation,
3.
sir.
Oh, thank you kindly. Yeah, we'll see if season 3, episode 3, is a similar self-contained episode like seasons 1 and 2.
Man, I want to write that one down and I don't want to forget that.
Yes, that probably would be a great idea because I do not have the mind of an elephant.
We're gonna get to season 3, episode 3, and we're gonna be like, you know what?
Dude,
It's
didn't they
kind
do
of
this
like,
in seasons 1 and 2?
oh man.
Oh, geez. So this episode, like runtime, I think it was around like 35, 36 minutes, somewhere around there. So it's
38 minutes and 25 seconds, and that's
yeah.
with his nice ramblings in the
Oh.
beginning.
So it's probably like 30 minutes long. Knowing Dallas, he's a little long-winded sometimes. So considerably shorter than the typical runtime.
That's coming from the people that do, like, hour and 45-minute
Yeah,
podcasts on a 38
he's a
minute
little
episode.
long-winded. Okay, he talked for 5 minutes. Let's just calm down, Dallas. Yeah. So on that note, I think this episode, while this is my favorite episode of the show, I think this podcast episode will be probably pretty short as well, because like I don't want to go play by play. I just want to talk about the things that stuck out to me and what I felt were important and like made me think about things. And then I would ask you to do the same. Because basically this was just, yes, you, James, do the same, but also listener, you do the same and comment. Let us know what stuck out to you. Excuse me. Because the entire episode is basically just the disciples talking with each other in this camp that they're setting up while Jesus is healing the sick that are coming to him. So I think the first thing, the main thing that I think is like quoted from this episode is the Mary Magdalene line where they're talking about Big James, was reciting some prophetic poem, I believe is what he called it, about like the Messiah coming when the land was filled with righteousness. Probably not getting the quote right, but basically like the Messiah would come when the people were holy enough for him to come, something along those lines. And Mary's like,
I know,
she's like, no, I think he's here because we're not holy without him. Something along those lines. Again, I should write these quotes down, but I'm a terrible podcaster and I did not do that. But that's like the big quote from the episode. Obviously, that's like one of those lines that just like pierces to your heart, right? Because I think that sometimes can be a huge misconception about coming to salvation, or even as simple as just coming to church or getting to know Jesus before being saved is like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Like, look at all this stuff that I've done. Like, I'm not holy, like they're saying in this episode. I'm not righteous. But like, we can't be those things without Jesus. So like that thought process has to kind of just be eliminated, because even the most perfect human on this earth isn't holy enough or isn't righteous enough in the eyes of God. Because nobody's perfect. Jesus was the only perfect person to walk this earth. So just like, I know I've had that thought like kind of trap me before, where I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, I can't serve in church, or I shouldn't even be in church. Like when I was first, getting introduced to church and Jesus and all that, like, hey, I can't do that. Like, I'm not a holy person. Like, I'm not a church person. But that's who Jesus is coming for, right? Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but to start the episode off, that's the big thing that kind of was like, oh yeah, that got the wheels turning.
No, it did. Um, Thinking about what you're saying, I feel like it. So what you're saying is that you think you're seeing it as a barrier
Yes, yes.
to get into, and I'd agree. And it's weird. I was trying to process as you were talking there,
It's a
and
much
so
better way to put it than how I was stumbling
no,
through
no,
it. A
you're good. You're good.
barrier. Yes.
Um, but it's a barrier, and what I found, it's like, from what I've experienced and what I have observed, is that it's a barrier, like a dam almost, like the Hoover Dam, like it's this barrier to get in, right? But
Mhm.
once it's broke, there's this flood water of like flying in. And at that time, it's almost like you feel great. You're like, this is amazing. God, I'm broken there. It's like this complete understanding. And then I feel like as you go on, like you almost like go back, revert back in some regards. Like you're not, like you said, we're not perfect. So
Mhm.
like no matter what you do, you're like kind of on fire or for whatever it is. And then you're kind of just struggling and doing these. And then like I feel like the shame sets in, and then you're almost creating a new barrier,
Yeah.
because you know better. You should be doing
Yeah.
better, but you can't because you suck and you're a human. Like it's
Yeah.
just there's this lot like it's just I don't know. It's weird. I was trying to think about this as you were saying it, but that's what I think she's saying. Like like what was the actual quote I want? I was trying to actually
Like,
find it, but
he. I'm gonna look it up.
I can't. Do we need our
Yeah.
searching music right now? Um, yeah,
I think he's here because we can't be holy without him.
yeah, and
And
that's
I
no. Oh, go
go
on.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I would say that's as you become, I don't want to say Christian, but Christian. I don't know what other word you would use there, but like as you're walking, um, I'll just say like the metaphor of like walking with Jesus, right? As a follower of him, right? You're supposed to
Mhm.
be some sort of light reflection of who he is, right? When you're For me personally, I'll just speak from like trying to speak this like generalization and it's just not working out. For me, I have a tendency to, when I am not waking up and reading my Bible and processing, and I don't mean it in like a legalistic way of like, I didn't wake up and read my Bible. I mean like in a way that I'm reading and thinking, and it's affecting my day and affecting my thoughts. I have a tendency to, like when I get cut off, like I yell out loud in the car. You know what I mean? I say like I'm speaking of a very specific example, but like I'm not, walking with it. I'm not feeling holy. I'm not feeling, and so to take that metaphor into their perspective, they're literally walking with him right now. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And even right now, and actually is a better, even more on that metaphor here, is that when Jesus actually gets back to the camp later on, they stop fighting
Yeah.
because he's present, because he's there, and they feel, and oddly enough, you can tell by them being silent, they feel shame, or at least some sort of like understanding of what they're saying and doing is
Yeah.
wrong. I don't know.
There's like, I can't believe we're being such big dum-dums. He's
I
out there literally healing the sick, and we're like arguing over the
over
stupidest
like
thing.
Matthew being and so I don't really know exactly where I was going with that one. Remind me of where we started.
It doesn't matter.
Good. I like that
But no, I
answer.
think so like Jesus is the wrecking ball that comes in and like breaks down that barrier, right?
Okay.
But the goal, right, is as we live with and follow Jesus, like his holiness and righteousness, like it like rubs off onto us. And like, though yes, we like are broken and like aren't perfect, like the point is for Jesus to transform and bring change, right? And we talk a lot about repenting, and with that, we turn from where we were going the opposite way with Jesus, and in turn that should help us become more holy and more righteous,
Mhm.
because we're seeing like the ways that he's lived and what he's called us to live, and that should like obviously make us see like, oh yeah, what we were doing, like that's obviously that's going to lead to destruction, right? This road leads to life. But we're all human, we're all going to like stumble and like stub our toes here and there. But yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with that. But
No, I like where you're going. I think that I was thinking about it as you're saying it. I feel like we're never really like said he's perfect. We're not, right? I don't think we're ever really called to be perfect, right? I think we're called to be better. I think we're called to be like renewed in a different way, or
Mhm.
or at least show signs of restoration from what we, from a fall, I guess you would say, to bring it into terms of like Genesis or whatever. But um, yeah, it's pretty interesting to think that yeah, we're not really called to be that way, and it's like I lost my thought, but
so far,
that's
every point either of us has made have been like, I don't even know what we're doing, what we're talking about. But yeah,
that's
that's
that's the great
welcome
part
to
of
the Chosen Companion series.
welcome to a late night
Yeah, that's what happens when you
podcast.
listen to a bunch of
Yeah.
non-expert people talk about these big brained
Or people
topics.
that don't get paid to do it. Because then they
Yes.
wake up, they're fresh, it's morning. You always see those like video podcasts and they're always like, it's daylight. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, it's
they
not
woke
11
up,
o'clock at
went
night.
to work.
They
But
didn't just, like work an
work
8-hour
all
day and
day
then
and
like,
then go to the family and
yeah,
then
do all the family stuff and
Mhm.
then muster up enough energy, sit in front of a microphone. But yeah, so that was a big thing for me. Another big thing was the conversation with little James and Thomas about uh like that whole situation. Um First off, biblically, is this another like creative liberty that they took with the show with little James and
I'm
his
glad you brought that up. So
malady?
this is I was on my way down to, come on this podcast with you, and I was like, there's something that I need to remember. And it's this scene. So I thought the same thing. My wife thought the same thing. And like the good podcaster she is, she she did the research. I thought
Nice.
out loud, I was like, I wonder if that's this. And she's like, I wonder if that's that. She went digging. She
Yeah,
found
she
it.
actually looked.
So the creative liberty that you're referring to is that he's talking about um who was talking to him. Thomas was talking
Mhm.
to little James and was like, like, aren't you like upset? Like, don't you like feel like you should be healed? Like, he's walking around, you have lines of people healing. Like, why have you not asked to be healed? And it's not really apparent right there. I mean, I didn't pick up on it until I don't know, does he have like a little bit of a limp or
Yeah, he
something?
walks with a little bit of a
Yeah,
limp.
okay. And so I didn't really pick up on that. I don't know. They do wear like big robes too, so it's hard to see like
Mhm.
form-fitting kind of things that would indicate this. But apparently, Jordan Walker Ross, the actor that plays Little James, has severe scoliosis and minor cerebral palsy. And so
Oh.
what happened is that um when he was cast for this role, I don't think Dallas Jenkins knew this or like really realized it until like after he was already on. I could be botching this a little bit. It's in this article, but um after the fact, he said, "Can I write this into the character of him?" And so I think it's really good because it's like um they're like meeting him where he's at there. I don't know. And like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I don't know how to word it when I'm trying to say, but
That brings up
um
a good talking point though. Um, so in this scene, little James comes back from his shift
mhm.
with the line, and he's like grumpy, and he sits down, and he gets even more grumpy by the fact that Philip is like totally botching the game that he's playing with Thomas. And he sits down, and he's complaining about the Samaritans, and he's like, like would these people basically his big complaint is would these people even believe Jesus is who he says he is if he wasn't doing all these miracles healing these people? And Thomas is like, well, yeah, that's what he said, that's why he's doing it. And little James is like, yeah, I know, but they like why does it take them having to see this? And like that obviously is something that like I think sometimes is like a fair thing to question, right? Um, but then Thomas kind of breaks it down even further because he's like notices that he walks with a limp, and he's like, so like I'm just gonna speak plainly, like I don't mean to offend you or anything, but like what's wrong with you? Like
Mhm.
and he basically says like, oh yeah, it's some form of paralysis. I've had it since birth. And then Thomas goes on to say, well, like why, like, does it kinda, like, upset you that he hasn't healed you, like, while he's doing all this other crazy stuff that we've been doing, this last however long we've been with him? And I think, doesn't he say, "Yeah, kind of, but also, like,
He's
I kinda don't wanna ask?"
yeah, he doesn't want to ask because he's scared that like Jesus is going to see him differently for almost like ungrateful or just um yeah, I don't know what other word I would use there, but like he just doesn't want to he doesn't want to he's very
Self-conscious about it.
self-conscious. No, but he's also I think he's very just humbled to be where he's at.
Yeah,
And like I feel like almost like honored to be like I am called to be a disciple.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like they're like in their eyes, this is who they've been waiting for, who the entirety of um Israel has been waiting for. And here we are, like he's one of the people that gets to, he's like, I don't know why. I know he knows. I didn't know if I'd have to bring it up. I don't know if
yeah,
he'd like heal me if regardless, you know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
it's very interesting. And I think it's a pretty fair position to be in. I mean, I think sometimes like I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty serious thing, but even like think about how odd it is to ask for like a raise at a job. That's
right,
and that's not even like remotely as comparable to this situation, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you get to ask for a raise and you're going to be like you're sweating, you're kind of like
yeah,
how do I word this? How do I talk? How do I, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like I don't know, maybe other people are like really good at asking for raises and that type of thing, but like, it's it's different. And so like this is asking for the biggest raise of his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are no more better. And so I don't know. I just when I look at it, I'm like it's a pretty fair thought.
Yeah.
But
Does it
he
does it get resolved much, like, that conversation, or, like, how does it end? I kinda forget. Is that
I'll
when,
look
like,
that up, but
Mother Mary comes? That's what I'm gonna call Jesus's mom.
Philip walks over.
Mm. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely like, I think also maybe there's, like, a thing where, like, I mean, even today, it's still kind of like a stigma around, like, disabilities, right? And not being considered or treated as, like, whole or normal, or as, like, the same as what people would call normal, un undisabled, not disabled people, and, like you were saying, little James is like, "Holy crap, like, this is crazy. I got called to follow the Messiah and, like, go on this one literally once in a lifetime, like, most important, like, journey," right? And, like, I don't want him to see me as, like, lesser than, like, maybe I can't do this, or, like, I
Mhm.
shouldn't do
Or
this. I don't know
ungrateful
what
or
disabled people were looked at upon in society back then, who knows? But
it's probably
did
not I mean, you bring up a good
any
point. It's probably not too far from like a paralytic
yeah,
or or I mean, yeah, I wouldn't think it's too far from that. I mean, it's I feel like it'd be like something like I mean, because they were still asking the question. I mean, his own disciples asked Jesus, who sinned for these for him to be this way?
mhm,
Who is in his family sinned, like that generational sin, that whole like so I feel like this right here, even like in their eyes, they don't understand cerebral palsy or scoliosis. So they're looking at it as okay, well, there's some sort of I can't think of a good word for it, but paralysis. That's the way he uses. I think he uses it. Like almost like it's a partial
mhm,
paralysis as opposed to these people that a paralytic man who can't walk, right? That
yeah,
we saw in the other season. So I don't know. I think that it's probably I don't know. That's a good I don't know. That's a good point to think about. I didn't really think about it that way until now.
yeah.
Um,
It does raise a good question, and one that I don't really think anyone has an answer
Well,
for,
no, but
like
that's what I was thinking about. So it falls in line with how he's thinking of himself too, right? He has a societal impact or view that is looked upon people that have any sort of disability, right? And
mhm,
so now that's reflecting into the view of himself. Almost look like almost probably looking at it as like everyone else here can walk fine. They can do all these stuff. You know, I almost have to like not ask for these types of things so that I can keep up with everyone else around or like be at their same level. You know what I mean?
mhm,
I mean, because he's clearly shamed in
yeah,
in asking. He doesn't want to ask. He doesn't want to. He's like, I think he's there. He might look at me different. I might ruin my position. I might ruin. I might not. I might be unfollowed. Right? Like, or
oh, no,
like
unfriended. It's the
unfriended.
worst when
Yeah,
Jesus unfollows you.
exactly.
Yeah, but Thomas brings up a good point. He's like, "You think he doesn't know your situation?" Like,
They both laugh.
um, yeah,
They
but
both laugh
I mean,
at
it's
that.
still it's valid though of like, um, why isn't he healed? And that's a question a lot of people ask,
It's a question of the ages, man.
right? And it's one
Why?
that we don't really have the answers to. But yeah, it doesn't mean God's not good. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's one of the many, many mysteries of our faith. But that was a big moment for me, a very powerful scene, I thought. And then, of course, we have the fighting around the campfire. I thought it was
Mhm.
funny, Mother Mary, like, telling the story of Jesus being born and, like, what she went through, which was an interesting take probably on being the mother of the Son of God. I'm sure that was probably awkward a lot, and uh, probably things that Mary may have thought or, had to deal with. I mean, I'm sure that would be crazy.
I think it's you
Like
mean what do you elaborate a little more on what
like
you mean there?
like her talking about, like, after he was born, like, she still had to clean him off, like, he was cold, he was crying, like,
Mhm.
he needed her help and Joseph's help. Like, they had to raise this baby who is, like, God in the flesh. Like, they were told that she was giving birth to the Son of God, and then, like, it's still a human baby. So, like, that just probably in their brains, I mean, in my brain, it still is like, "What?" But, like, it's just a normal baby, but it's also, like, God in the flesh, like, I don't know, it's just a weird thing to have to I couldn't imagine. Could you imagine being Jesus's parents?
No. And but I think I had this I don't know, it's probably some Advent thing. I try to find like non surface level Advent studies each year to do and I feel like it was I don't know, it was like last year. I don't know. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but it really kind of pushed me towards thinking this way. Like I think it just you get this whole like he came out in a manger and no, he came out screaming and like crying like every other baby
Mhm.
that has ever you know what I mean, lived and they cry. They are disgusting when they come out with what's inside. Like, I mean, not
Yeah,
disgust. You know what I mean? That's the
yeah.
truth.
It's
We're
messy.
it is. It's a
It's a
you know,
birth.
and at that time, you're like, "I don't care. I don't that's not what you're thinking." You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's just but the reality is they come out like that, and I don't there's no reason to believe that he was any bit different, and so, like, I don't think it's any like I mean, obviously, this is not, this is not from the Bible, this
Right,
scene,
right, right.
you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
definitely a creative liberty, but, like, it's a good one.
Mhm.
If that you know what I mean? Like, so I thought this scene was real deep because it was just like, yeah, I mean, just think about that too, um, like, you're a virgin, you have a baby, right? That's the crux
Crazy.
of our
Step 1 of
the
crazy.
big crux of our faith, right? I mean, that's like, I think when we look at things of, like, evil happening in the world and, like, this and that, like, I think those are pretty difficult questions, but I don't think they're as difficult as these types of questions like this is not an easy thing for me. This isn't something that for me personally I take lightly, and it's a difficult there's like those types of things I don't really live off of faith. I think these types of things I do. And like and so the reality is like she's this that is having a baby that is being told she's giving birth to you know the savior of the world. Like that's I try to say those words out loud and like try to understand and there's no way I can even put myself in those shoes. I
Yeah.
don't even know what it's like to be a woman having a child in general. And you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And yet alone like there's one that is the expectations you probably have, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, of, like, what it's gonna look like Does he come out with the sword? Does he come out like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, because at that time I don't think she understood deeply what the Messiah is, you know what I
Right.
mean? And so like, you know, you get these cultural contexts of what it actually is, and it's
Yeah.
like, and so I don't know,
Which,
man.
by the way, is really cool to hear that whole conversation around the fire of like
It
what they expected when the Messiah came, and they were all like you're talking about, like war hero,
yeah,
like we talked about the entire
I
series,
had
but
dreams of killing Roman soldiers. That's what
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that what can I think of her name?
Rama
Rima, yeah. Was that
being
Rima?
being saved as she hid under the the
Yeah, yeah.
bed. Yeah,
And so like, yeah, it's this it is expectation. I think that's the
yeah,
word for it, you know, and it's I think it's unfair to say that she didn't have expectations and
yeah,
like what she and like and to fast forward a little bit, it's a little off of what we're but like she has the baby and then they have to run. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know if it's instant, but pretty soon
yeah,
thereafter they're on the run for potentially being murdered.
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and then
and
fast forward to like where we are now, like take away the expectation thing because like she's starting to see that come
uh
to fruition. Now it's like I would imagine just helpless. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm I'm his mother, yes, but like he is my God and like can literally I just watched him turn water into wine. Like he literally healing and casting out like disease and sickness and these ailments and like I'm supposed to take care of my son? Like
yeah.
what am I supposed to do that he can't already do, you know? But I think it's like the end of this episode is so beautiful in the way that like
Yeah.
he comes back after this day long uh ministry thing after travel like they literally traveled for days, got there, and then this happened. So like the disciples, this whole conversation is happening while they're setting up the camp. So Jesus had no time to rest. He's immediately thrust into this ministry time. Comes back, who knows how late it is, pitch black out. They've already had dinner. They're like chilling around the campfire. He comes back, he's exhausted, and then Mary goes over to the tent, like helps him get his sandals off, like washes his feet, basically like cleans him up and tucks him into bed. And it's just like just a really like touching moment of like he's still like he doesn't technically need her, but like he needs his mom. And like there's just like that cool little
Yeah, no, I
moment there.
that's good. And I don't know. I like what you just said. He doesn't technically need her, but like, but his reaction was to kind of, he's like, oh, Ima, you know,
Hmm.
like you're here. Yes, he's like, I'm so tired. And he's just kind of like going through and he's accepting the help. He's letting her
Hmm.
do that. And like, um, I think that's a pretty good, almost like a, I feel like if there's one big great thing to take away from most of Jesus's things, it's to like he's trying to be an example. You're following what he does, and I feel like these are pretty like you should humble yourself to your mother or your people that are taking care of you, and in a way that like you almost like should be accepting help from because you can't do everything on your own. You can't do these things, and even him is like you said, he doesn't need it just as he did he could have when he was in the wilderness for 40 days he could have turned a rock into bread and he could have done these things but
No.
like the reality is like he's accepting these limitations of I guess you would say earth or whatever in and
Mhm.
he's I don't know. I just thought that was a really good um I don't know, just seeing him kind of like just accept it and it's like
Yeah.
almost not like oh I got this we're good you know like I would do. I'm just thinking about myself I'm like
Yeah, yeah.
I just I'll handle it when I'm like clearly the world is crumbling around me. I'm like oh
Mhm.
I got it we're good you know but he's not. He's just like, yeah, absolutely. Wash
Thank
my
you.
feet,
Yeah.
let me in, and um,
Yeah, I do love it. He's like, I'm so tired.
yeah, I'm so tired. I'm just, Ema, I'm so
uh,
tired.
and honestly, I was not expecting to talk about that at all tonight.
What?
That whole like whatever 5-10 minutes we just talked about Mary
Oh,
and Jesus, that whole thing. Um,
really? I
yeah,
thought that was
no,
like one of the biggest. I thought that was so the first time I watched this episode, the first time through, that was like the big thing for me, that point. And then this time I started to see all the other things, and honestly, I didn't want to admit it till now, but the first time I watched it, I didn't pick up on the cinema thing about the 13-minute, like I just didn't pick up
yeah,
on it. And
no,
and so
it just means you're not a dork.
yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of books and other things that would say that I am. So we'll just I appreciate your thoughts
Anytime.
there, but
That's what I'm here for.
uh
But yeah, is there anything so far? Because I know I've just been rattling off thing
no, no,
after
no.
thing. But is there anything up to this point that like really impacted you or you thought stuck out?
In this episode,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good question. Um, I don't, I don't know. I mean, I think not anything that we haven't addressed is what I mean.
Right.
No, well, I will say I like just this whole episode in general. It's called, what is it called?
Matthew
Matthew
4:24.
4:24.
Yeah.
And just to remind you, literally this whole episode stems from Matthew 4:24 pretty much.
What?
But
No way.
but it literally reads, news about him spread as far as Syria, and people soon began bringing to him all who were sick, and whatever their sickness or disease, or if they were demon possessed or epileptic or paralyzed, he healed them all. Literally, I just thought that was. I went up and I try to, bring up scripture and before or as we're going through and I'm looking at this and I'm like, this whole episode stemmed from idea. I just like the imagination in it, right? I really do like it a lot because that's not a it's not a really detailed thing. Like they're just like,
Right.
hey man,
Also,
everyone came
all of that happened
and they all walked
completely
away.
off scene, like off camera. None of
Mm.
that actually happened in the episode, which I think is kind of ironic.
That's a really good observation right there. No, that is. And it's implicit, like it's implied through it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
doesn't really actually explicitly show
No, you don't see
anything.
anything. You
It's
just see the
just
line.
yeah, that's it. And it's implicit in the understanding that
Mhm.
it's being done.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's interesting.
I
But
also
I
love
just
how like during that first part,
uh-huh.
Matthew and Philip are walking down the line. And as people are like running by, like somebody even like runs into Matthew, but he's like, well, tell me about your encounter with Jesus. And he's like trying to write down all the stuff that's happening. And of course, he got as detailed as a lot of people
and,
came and he healed them all.
and you know what I really like too is I'm looking at it now. It was I always, just for your guys' behind the scenes thing, I always have the episode sitting here playing. Not really, and I can't hear it, but it's paused on Peter lying by the fire, and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
more exhausted than Jesus.
I know,
Like
right?
he's just like, and it shows how like just Peter didn't take a step away from that thing the whole day.
Mhm.
Even if Jesus was like, bro, get away from here, go. He would have been like behind the bushes or something, like
Yeah.
concentrating, climbing up a tree to see
Hand
whatever.
on his dagger, just
Yeah,
ready to stab someone.
and so I'm making that. I see him now, and I'm like, he literally is just more exhausted.
Yeah.
a-
So, like around the fire, the last kind of thing
Mhm.
that stuck out to me, like we don't have to get into all the conversations around the fire because there are a couple, and they're all
Yeah.
really good. And if you've watched the episode, you know what they talked about.
Yeah,
It
you don't
gets
want to hear talk for 2 hours about.
Right, yeah.
20-minute
I
conversation.
forget what Nick said on Showboys, but for like he said in one episode, he's like, for every 30 minutes of airtime, we talk for an hour. So we're we're probably around like 45 minutes episode right now, like podcast episode
Yep.
wise. So we're getting close. And you know what? He is so accurate because that is exactly what happens. Anyways, they're talking. One of the things that comes up basically is like the Roman oppression of the Jews and how the Jews like have their strict laws. I love the part where they're talking about like, did you ever like break any of the laws, you know, when no one was looking? And they're all like, yeah, one time I ate meat and cheese after my parents went to bed. And then Thaddeus is like, yeah, dude, one time, dude, I was in this market and I slammed some pork and it was so good. And that just like cracked me up. But they're talking about like, I think it's important because you have Matthew sitting there who is Jewish, but clearly not oppressed by the Romans because he worked for the Romans and had this like elegant as you can as a Jew working for Romans lifestyle. But compared to the others there, he was very well off. And that, of course, turns into a big fight. But I thought a few things like stuck out during those scenes where like Simon's like, do you even understand like our life? I'm paraphrasing massively if you can't tell by what I'm about to say, but he's pretty much like, yeah, our life kind of sucks because we have all these crazy like rules and they're super strict. Also, we're massively oppressed by the Romans, but we still like live this way. Why? Because we know eventually like there's hope because the Messiah will return and we're the chosen people and we will be saved. But like, do you even understand what it means to live like that generation after generation, like knowing that life sucks, but you still are doing it? And he's like shouting all this at Matthew because, you know, obviously in their eyes, Matthew is like a scumbag and for all intents and purposes up to joining the party here. He kind of was a scumbag, right? He's like betraying his own people, right? To put more money in the pockets of the oppressors. But like all this is going on, they're bickering, they're yelling, and like Big James and John start arguing and fighting with Andrew and Simon, Peter. And then Jesus walks in, like about to fall over because he's so exhausted. They see the whole interaction with Mary tucking Jesus into bed, and they all just like shut up and they're just like, oh wow, we're a bunch of idiots. Like we're here arguing about all this stuff that at this point doesn't even matter anymore because it's the past and we're with Jesus now. And meanwhile, Jesus just spent literally all day like healing all these people and we're just sitting around the fire yelling at each other. Like,
Yeah,
that's kind of dumb.
it is. But now I'm looking at, I don't. So I would counter, kind of counter. I don't know what to counter, but like, do you think that seeing that, for instance, Peter would have changed his thoughts about Matthew?
No.
Okay, and because I really like what Andrew brought up in it is that he's like, you made my life horrible, man. And Andrew's like, you know, Peter's you know, you got the angel on the shoulder and the devil on the shoulder, right? I don't know if you call Peter
Yeah, no,
devil,
Andrew's like
but
the goody two shoes of the bunch.
and he always seems to give like fair you know, or what he's shown so far in the show is that he gives fair reason. He's very calm, he's collected, he's, you know, and he's just like, Matthew, man, like, you made my life horrible.
Yeah.
Like, horrible. And
Yeah.
you never apologized. And like, so I think that's, I think at this point, like, Andrew seems to get it. He understands it. But what he's, I think he understands it more of a deeper level of like, like, it's not about you following Jesus right now. Like, you still have to turn from what you did.
Yeah.
You still have to understand where you went wrong, or at least like make amends for it, at least, to some capacity. Like, whether we forgive you or not, like, you have to at least show that, like, you want that, or at least understand that there's something that you need to be forgiven for, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think that's like, and it's clear that Matthew doesn't fully understand that. He's almost like, "Well, what do you want me to say?" Like, I don't he doesn't
Hmm.
understand, and it's probably part of his character that they've written into it. But like,
Right. Right.
um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good take on it, and
I don't think that like in that scene of them seeing Jesus when they all kind of shut up, like
mhm,
it changes any of their minds or their mindsets about what was happening, other than like, well, what we're like arguing about is kind of petty in the grand
mm,
scheme of what's
okay.
going on. So like maybe we should just kind of stop because we're being silly. But I don't think it's like resolved anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Interesting.
Um oh shoot, there's something I was gonna say, but I can't remember. And I doubt it was important, but hardly
Uh,
anything I say is ever like
so
super like, oh my gosh, you gotta hear this. But yeah, so that kind of like wraps up the big important parts for me at least.
it is. I do like how they zoomed out. I thought that was, it's Jesus in there getting tucked in by Ema and being and just praying. It was
Yeah.
funny.
I just love our like our summaries
Uh,
in like layman's terms.
yeah, you know, I'm trying to be more official. I'm calling her Ema
Yeah,
instead.
yeah. I
No,
like
but
it.
it like kind of just the silence of them all at the fire, and it's just zooming out of them all
Hmm.
just still and pondering.
Yeah.
And you know what though, like, it may not have changed anything, but they're learning. You know what I mean? To watch these, they're I don't know. I feel like, I mean, just even I brought that up, I think, really early on in the episode, but or in our podcast, is that, last one they didn't I don't they were still bickering about, like, they have no idea about anything.
Oh
But I
yeah, yeah.
think, like, now they're starting to just mold into who they are as a group. And that's what they were doing before, is they're drawing conflict to one another, and they're hashing it out, right? Like, you can't grow while there's this tension. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you need to bring it up, call it out, and
Well, I like how it all starts as like Andrew basically doing a would you rather game, and then it like turns into this like giant
but that's
disaster of a
usually how it
conversation.
but that's usually how it goes. I really can't bring up the example that I want to now, but, we had something that was very similar to that, and it's, eh, with families and stuff. But, like, you just, it stems from, like, this creative fun part, and just gone. But it shows that, like, because they're being comfortable with each other, and they're starting to be it's a icebreaker, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you do the icebreaker to get comfortable. As soon as you get comfortable, the reality comes out, and the realness of your situation and your group, and the conflict and the struggles and the tension, and it gets real really quickly, you
Mhm.
know? Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think this is one of the episodes. Of course, this story is um, told from the disciples' point of views, right?
That's the goal
Jesus
of
is
it.
like a main character, right? But you don't follow Jesus like every
Mhm,
scene of the show. You're almost following a disciple in every scene of the show, just about.
mhm.
Um, so like episodes like this, and in particular the scene around the campfire, which is the entire episode. Who am I kidding? Because even when the fire is being started, like they're still around the campfire, like talking and having these conversations. But it's really showing like exactly what we've been talking about, like how awkward it probably was for these people to like first start this journey together, right? This is like the classic case of like newlyweds. Um, the husband getting in trouble for leaving the toilet seat up or whatever, like you get yelled at, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, remember 3 weeks ago when you didn't do this, and then we've all been there.
No, but that's really it, is that those are you can almost think about as like somebody being like there's this leadership tool where you're a protector,
Mhm.
you're an abdicator, or a dominator, right? And so like you're anywhere on those area, but what you want to be is something called a liberator. And
Mhm.
you can see that is like they're in terms of each other, they're just kind of all over that spectrum. Like you just said, they're they're nice until they can, and then all the tension is built up that they've never, and then they jump to this like dominating stance of like,
Mhm.
which Simon did. Andrew did it more subtly and not in a much more elegant way.
Yeah. And
As
funnily, I think he even, like,
he did say
says
that.
that. He's like,
He,
"I'm basically saying the same thing as him, just not as mean."
yes,
Like,
he did actually address that. He's like, what Simon could have said more elegantly, or
yeah.
more in a better way, is that, and that's when he's like, dude, like you hurt us and you never even
Mhm.
apologized, man.
Yeah.
Like, um, yeah, dude. So I don't know. I thought I think this has been a really good episode. I
Yeah.
think just the uniqueness of it, the um whether it's creative liberties or not, with a lot, well, it's clearly we just read the one verse. I don't think we got any of
Yeah.
this out of the one
Yeah.
verse that we read, right? So
Yeah.
literally zero of it. So I think that's the beauty of it. And like for you to, I feel like for the most people be like, how did this never happen? I don't know, whatever. And you're just like, dude, like,
That's not the point, like,
well, it
these
is
things
but
are written in to, like, make you think, right? To bring
but
up
he,
conversations like we're having right now to, like
but even so though, like, what do you think they did? They
Right,
just
right.
uh, didn't have conflict?
No.
Have you read anything about Peter in the Bible? You think he cut off a dude's ear? You know what I mean? Like, after following him for a long time, like, you
Yes.
think he wasn't doing these types of things to people like Matthew,
Right.
that he may not have like technically oppressed himself, but I think there's a pretty large indication that they both were in the same area and both called from the same. They were probably, had a few interactions. They probably knew, or Peter at least knew who, you know what I mean? That's a
Mhm.
pretty good creative liberty. So I don't know. When I look at it, I'm like, you know what, man? I think these are great, and I think what they're doing so far, they're at least committing to it, and the interaction between them and the development of the characters has just been fantastic. I
Yeah.
really like
Yeah.
it. It's just well written. So yeah, I was super happy with this episode. Um, how many scrolls do you give it
Oh,
out of 7
7.
scrolls?
7 out of
7
7
scrolls.
scrolls.
I agree. I agree. I'm giving it that.
Yeah,
Not
this
six
is
and a
just
half. Not No. It's
no,
a 7.
no,
I agree.
it's great. No,
I
my
wouldn't have done
favorite
that the
episode
first
of the
time through.
series. What'd you say?
I said I wouldn't have done that the same first time
Mm,
through.
nice.
Um, but that I would now 7.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
first viewing was my favorite episode, second viewing just solidified it. It's just the technical, like,
Mhm,
cinematography stuff, great, but, like, all of the content that is
mhm.
within the campfire stuff, just the interactions with all the disciples. It's just a lot of things to make you
Yeah,
think, and a lot of things to like use as an example, right? Of like where you can grow from.
Mhm.
But with that being said, I think we're done. It's probably the shortest podcast episode, I would say. I'd have to look at the times, but I'm going to make an assumption and say we're probably
I think it's a
getting close.
pretty good assumption.
But yeah, what do you got going on these days? Before we wrap up, anything out of the ordinary?
Yeah, I'm actually this week. Well, you guys will not be getting it until sometime in January, probably beginning of time travel. Yeah, right. So I'm starting a series called Broken, which I'm pretty excited about.
Nice.
Goal is to kind of start interviewing leaders of the church and leaders of just different ministries, and just discussing like what is broken in the church. You know, I mean, it's a pretty broken system. No, but it's I think there's a lot of issues. It's pretty broken. I mean, if I feel like many of the people that'd be like, no, it's not broken. I'd be weary. I'd be pretty weary of them. And they're typically, I don't know. There's just so much things about it that I would love to. And I don't mean it like stay away from church. Clearly not. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's pretty
room to
broken.
improve.
And there's, you know, and I feel like some of the best pastors that I've like experienced are the ones that acknowledge that it's broken. So I want to interview those leaders. So I got my first one coming up, and so I got that. I'm
Nice.
recording that Wednesday morning, and so
It's exciting.
you'll air it. I'll be airing that in January. So that's my big thing for the week. You know.
Nice. It's gonna be really awkward when we do this tomorrow night.
Yeah, right. Yes. So I'll be doing 3 podcasts in a row this week.
Yes. Make sure you check out thenerdybible.com for
Thank you.
all of James's content. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on. At the time that you are listening to this, we will have had our 5th stream of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So go check that out. That should be on our YouTube channel, Showboys Gaming. If not, our Twitch channel, Showboys Podcast. We got some this week. So the week of the 7th, we have a lot of lore stuff being published on the website, which is cool. My first time playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it is so fun. Like, I never thought it'd be this fun. It's so fun. But it's probably because I'm a giant dork. So go check that out. You know, check out our podcast Thursday nights, 9:00 on YouTube, Showboys Podcast. You can find all of our other junk over at showboysmedia.com. Other than that, we'll see you next week. And James, I'll see you tomorrow.
You sure will.
So you guys have a wonderful night. Bye.
Adios.